Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review the menu. So, I know a lot of people had an assortment of flavors that they would talk about this film. Some people would go on and state that it's great, that it's amazing, and some people would state that it was crap or it sucked. So, what would be my taste of this movie? I would go on and to have hoped that this movie is not going to be an hour and 40 minutes of people really just stuffing their faces and eating for an hour and 40 minutes. And come to find out, this movie is people stuffing their faces for an hour and 40 minutes, and there's just a little bit more than that. So we end up getting some shock value moments in some parts of this movie, but I feel like the shock value moments don't even out the huge amount of time that people are just putting food into their gob. I feel that to me also really like I was probably like the wrong audience for this movie also, simply because I really did not ever really care to watch stuff like the Food Network. I don't really care about watching shows where people are to go on and make food, like restaurant shows and whatever. So, like, really, I was like, I don't know if I'm ever, or I don't think I'm really going to like this before I went into the movie. And so, yeah, so this movie was dull, flat, and just a little boring. I couldn't root for anybody, and I think that should have been like the one thing where it's like I really should have cared about anyone, but I didn't. Uh, so I really didn't care about the film. So, teeing it up, we have this movie follow both Tyler and Margot, who spend quite a bit of money to go onto this island to get this one of a kind unique meal. And they all of a sudden are to be met with celebrities and kind of people who are famous critics in their own right, and so on and so forth. So we have both Tyler and Margot that are to follow a woman named Elsa to show them how all of these meals are to be prepared. And it seems that these people have consistently led a life of like food is their life. That they are to have to prepare all of these meals, to do all of these things for other people. So we then make our way to have Elsa delivering these people to the spot of which that they are going to eat. And like this movie kind of does like remind me of the movie The Last Supper, because it's fairly similar in a lot of ways. Or we kind of have like the arsenic and old lace kind of thing. But so the menu is to bring all these people here and then are to give them these like lavish meals like a amuse bouche, and to then go on and give them a bread plate that doesn't have bread on it but has all these kind of little things to dip your bread in. And so some people are getting upset, some people are thinking that they're mocking the people eating. And so 40 minutes in, we finally get our first real like shock moment of this movie, and then we just continue on to have all these people eat a meal, and we just kind of get to the point to where even the chef by the end of this movie is like, well, why haven't you like tried more often to try to escape this? Like, we've given you guys like seemingly endless possibilities to try that, and why haven't any of you? We also get the chef to reveal every secret that every single one of these rich people are to have. And so that, of course, is to upset quite a bit of these people. but then they go on to realize it's like, well, hey, like all these chefs are just on this island. Like, what are they gonna do? Like, I live a million miles away and whatever. So, like, what are they really gonna do? So, come to find out, by the end of this night, we realize that Chef Slowick is to tell all these people that he is going to kill them all off. Even to the point of not only the people eating the food, but the people preparing the food are all going to die together. And so hopefully we can go on and have somebody that this movie is to really build up. Hopefully we have at least one person that is going to be able to figure out a way to figure things out. So, by the end of this movie, I was just kind of left not really liking this film. I thought it was just a bad movie. I would have liked for if there was going to be these shocking moments, like I thought that there really should have been this like really big shocking moment that at least would even out all the other really slow moments that are throughout this entire film. Like, I thought if they were really going to go with some shocking stuff, they really should have escalated it. And really, it just kept being a flat film for me. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers. And so, let me know how you felt about the menu, because I know a lot of people probably state, no, I liked this film. I don't know what you're talking about. And there's also certain people that's like, no, I completely agree. Like, I was thinking that there was something more to this film, and there never really was. We have at certain times in this movie where people try to escape, but really it feels all like a mood point. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into that double 5 time territory, because it's about that time, yet again, to of course go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time you're going to spoil this movie. So, we have Margot and we have Tyler, and so they are waiting by this dock to go onto this yacht. So, we all of a sudden have Tyler that is upset with Margot because she is smoking. And Tyler is saying to Margot, it's like, well, hey, like, if you go on and if you smoke a cigarette, like, you're going to ruin your taste buds, and so you're not going to enjoy this meal. And Margot's like, oh, okay, I'll put the cigarette away. So we find the yacht that is coming in, and so Tyler and Margot are to start to notice certain stars coming in. So we have Lillian Bloom, that of course is to be this big, massive reviewer. We also have a movie star that is played by John Leguizamo, and he is to have had this big, lavish movie that everybody seems to know him by. And he also has a wife named Felicity. We also have this kind of older couple named Richard and Anne, and we'll have Anne throughout this movie, who is to like try to think that like certain people looks familiar, or that she was to have like talk to somebody, and it's like, oh, well, what did that person say? It's like, oh, you know Perry. So we also have these 3 rich guys that all 3 of them are to have these kind of really massive companies, and we have all 3 of them that, as more as this escalates, they start to kind of get more ticked off. And so with that said, we don't see all of those people coming in, but we see a good portion of them throughout this film. So When we get into the yacht, we of course have Margot and Tyler, who are next to the movie star and Felicity. So we of course have Tyler, who turns to Margot and states that this guy thinks that he's a foodie, but he's really not. And so we have John Leguizamo's character, who's boasting, the movie star, who's kind of boasting about how he knows this chef Slowik himself, and really this movie star is just lying through his teeth because he just wants to feel like he knows everybody. That he has gone on to be this a very substantial star, and so yeah, so we go into this yacht and we have them being served this food immediately, and this food ends up being an oyster with lemon caviar. And so we of course have Tyler, who eats every single meal, like regardless of like really thinking if he's gonna like it or not. So we have Tyler that downs this food, and we have Margot that's like, I don't know. So we then go on to the island, where Elsa is giving everybody a private tour of the island, even if they've gone on to been on this island far too much so. So we have Elsa, who's giving them this tour to showcase that this guy is personally getting them these scallops that they're going to eat tonight. And so the movie star kind of turns to this guy on this boat. He's like, well, hey man, like, get us this meal because we're hungry. So we have Bloom that goes on and states to Ted, I think his name is Ted, luckily, right? Yeah, his name is Ted. So, good thing that I can just quickly look at a cast list. So Bloom is to state that this is a biome for culinary ideas. So we have Elsa that goes on to this place that they are storing all this meat, and supposedly she goes on and states that they're having it rest for 152 days and keeping it like preserved and whatever. And so one of the people asks, it's like, well, like, so if someone goes on and eats this like on the 153rd day, what would happen to this meat? And we would have Elsa state, it's like, well, that person would obviously like get meat poisoned and die. So, like, because she probably knows from experience, I'm sure. So we have Tyler, who's walking on with Elsa, and ask her about this certain cottage. And Elsa is stated, it's like, well, that's the chef's cottage, and no one goes in there. And so Tyler's like, oh, okay. So all the people go into the room of which that they are going to eat this meal. And we have Tyler, who is a very foodie guy. So he, of course, is watching somebody prepare a meal, and he is to realize that this is the Paco Jet. So we go on to have Tyler that immediately is to know exactly what this is, and then so Tyler is pushing Margot to like, hey, look at this Paco Jet. And Margot's like, yeah, as if I know what that really is. As if I really care. So we go on to have, of course, the first meal, and we have the chef that has to go on as the meal is going to get served. He ends up like clapping really loud, and funny enough, every single time he ends up serving a meal, he has to clap. And we have certain people that it's like, he's seriously not going to go on and do that throughout the whole night, is he? And surefire enough, the guy is like, ah! And so at certain points, some people are to take his clap and just like, ugh, like they just start to shake because of it, because they are worried about what they're going to be in store with next. So we come to find out that the first meal is the amuse bouche, getting bushy. So we go on and have everybody eat that, and that of course is to have like scallops in it, and everybody's going on and having their opinion about this meal with the scallops. And so we have the rich guys that of course are to be both Bryce, Soren, and Dave, that are all stating it's like, well, like, you know what, I've had better scallops, you know, I've had a better meal, I've had this, I've had that. We have Bloom, the critic, that is to go on and just be like, you know what, like, feels like we're eating the ocean. And she has to go on and like critiquingly like just like go further and further and further into like critiquing this, so much so that she's mentioning some obscure like Man of the Ocean or something like that, and but she goes on and just states like, yeah, it feels like we're eating the ocean. And Ted's just going like, yeah, like I completely understand what you're stating. And like it seems that both Ted and both Lillian are to be just kind of in sync with one another, of knowing exactly where they're heading. And so I was like, all right, like we have the critics here. So we start to go on and everybody's just loving the meals and they're eating them and whatever. Even though Margot, it seems like this wasn't all really prepared for her, because they were actually supposed to be prepared for Tyler's wife, and come to find out they instead had to have this X factor come in that they weren't sure how they were going to easily prepare for Margot. It's kind of like Glass Onion all over again for me. So we go on, and then the next dish is the island meal. So we have this island meal, and it seems that again everybody seems to be won over by this. Everybody like is looking at this and is just enjoying that this seems like a almost kind of scenery piece. We of course have Chef Slowick come in and kind of mention how this meal was put together from this entire island, and that's the reason why they call it the island. So we go on to, of course, have Anne. That's when she is to mention, it's like, well, hey, like, you know, when I talked to Perry lately, and Richard's like, oh, you did? Like, so how is Perry? And Anne's like, you know, he's just Perry. So we have this couple that have like dialogue that just kind of goes nowhere throughout the whole entire movie, but then we're supposed to give a rip when something happens to them. So we then go into the breadless plate. So we go on to have Tyler that is like, yeah, like, oh my god, like, the breadless plate, all I'm eating is just these little side things and not the bread itself, but oh my god, this is wonderful. And Margot is just like, Tyler, like, you're just eating side things that isn't an actual meal. And so Margot's like, maybe you should send this meal back because it's not good. And so that's when Margot really decides that she's not going to eat this meal. She's not eating it. So Tyler's like, well, hey, I'll eat it. And he drops this wine. And so the chef is to look at Margot and just state, it's like, well, hey, like, why aren't you eating? Like, you're kind of upsetting me because you're not eating. And so Margot's like, well, like, I'm just not wanting to fill up on this. Like, I'm hoping that there's a much more substantial meal coming later. And we have Slowik that's like, no, 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 no. Like, I prepared every single bit of this food to immediately like come up with the right proportion for everybody to get a good source of food and so eat up, and Margot doesn't. So we honestly have Bryce, Soren, and Dave that start to get upset with there not being bread on this meal, and like, you know what, we paid a lot of money for this meal. So we have Elsa that comes over, and so the three guys are to state, it's like, well, hey, like, I don't want to do this, but like, do you know who I am? Like, do you know like how rich I am? So Elsa goes on and whispers sweet nothings to them by stating, it's like, well, hey, you're gonna get more food than what you really deserve, and so on. So we have Elsa that kind of just snaps back at him, just be like, you know what, like, you were awful people, so like, you should be happy with whatever we serve to you. So Bryce, Soren, and Dave are just like, okay, like, let's just continue to play along. So we have the critics that are going on and like, you know what, like, we're still liking this meal, we're still enjoying it. So we, of course, then go on and get to the third course. So we have Anne that goes on to ask Richard if the girl that's Margot looks familiar. It's like, well, hey, does that look like Claire, Richard? And Claire is like a person that they didn't show like a picture of or anything. So Richard states like, no, that's not Claire. And so Anne is just like, well, okay then, but it looks a lot like... And Richard's like, no, it's not Claire. So we finally go on to have the chef who goes into this long-winded dialogue of him being a kid, and he would remember when, like, he would, of course, like, have these very specific meals, like Taco Tuesday, and so we had Slowik that is to go on and mention that his mother is to be dining along with them, and they're like, oh, okay, all right, like, because we had Slowik that kind of like is to whisper to this woman, and so we had Slowik that states that this was his mother, and in the past his father was to have gone on and strangled his mother with a telephone cord, so much so that Slowik, or Chef Slowik, would have to have gone on and grabbed this thing of scissors to stab his father in the thigh to get him to stop. So we, because of that weird, horrific story, we then turn around and have Chef Slowik going on to make this chicken thigh that has this scissors in it, and this tortilla that is to go on and have everyone's secret inside of it. So what, of course, are all these secrets? So we have Tyler, who his simple secret is he had gone on to take photos of one of his meals, and he should not have. So that's the one secret that they showed, that they were taking pictures of him. And so we had the movie star secret was that he did this movie one time, and he was like, well, hey, yeah, like this is one of my movies, and like, you know what, like the script wasn't good, but like I did it because of the money. And like it was one of those kind of like, yeah, like the guy just kind of like it was at the like maybe the tail end of his career, and he just kind of kind of phoned in that performance. So we had Richard, who has photos of him having an affair, and Anne's looking on like, okay, like that, like why is that there? Why is there a photo of you talking to another woman? And so come to find out, Bryce, Soren, and Dave all have these documents that are stating that they are to, of course, what's the right word here? They have fake invoices of charges that aren't real. So they have fake invoices for their companies. So like they're kind of cooking their books. So we finally have all these secrets being revealed, and so we have the three guys that are just thinking, it's like, oh no 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 no, like there's no way, like if they expose us, then we can expose them in reverse. So like the guys are just kind of thinking, it's like, well, hey, we can just buy them off, like we're rich anyways. So we then come in to have this this sous chef that comes in and presents the fourth course, which this fourth course is to be the mess. And so Jeremy is to go on and to have made this mess, and Chef Slowik is to have this whole story about Jeffrey going on and having at all of every time, like no matter how well your life is going, there's always going to be some mess. There's always going to be some bad part of your life. So we have Chef Slowik that is to state that Slowik knows that Jeremy wants his life and is to, of course, want to be Slowik. So we finally have Slowik that turns to Jeremy and states to him, it's like, well, hey, Jeremy, do you want my life? And Jeremy says no. And so Slowik says, like, well, like, do you want your life? So Jeremy says no. So we have Jeremy that whips out this gun and shoots himself in the head, and they have this tarp, so they just quickly wrap him up, and everybody's like, oh my god, like he just died. So we have the mess, of course, being this meal that is this pressure cookered vegetable, roasted fillet, tomato confit, beef just, bone marrow, and to give us an RIP for Jeremy Loudon. So after everybody is to start to be like, oh my god, was that like a whole, like, was that a show? Was that fake? Was that real? Everybody's up in arms because he saw someone die. So we have Jillian that's assuming that all of this was all done for her, because of course she would. So we have Richard and we have Anne, and Richard is to want to go on and state like, hey man, I want to get out of here. I want to leave. Let's go. And so he's like, by my own hand, like, I'm going to go on and I'm going to figure out a way to get out of here. And Ella's like, well, which hand? And Richard's like, say what now? And Elsa is like, which hand? Is it the right or the left? So Richard's like, and so Ella's like, okay, the left hand then. And so she's like, take the ring finger. So they go on and they put this guy's hand on this table and chop off his ring finger and give it back to him. And everybody's like, oh my God. Like, so we have the next dish, which is this pate cleanser. So we go on to have Chef Slowik that is to take Margot at some point and find out why she's really here. Because Margot is, to come to find out, she's to be this prostitute that Tyler paid to be here. Because his wife was to have left him, and so Tyler had now brought this girl with him. So we have the chef that's now saying to Margot, it's like, well, hey, if you're not going to be the person that eats the food, then you need to go on and be the person that is to serve the food. You're going to be one of the chefs. Like, if you don't go on and you start eating the food, you're going to have to be one of the chefs. And so I'm going to give you X number of minutes to come up with that answer of whether or not you're going to go on and either be a chef or be a person that eats. So, like, there's a whole other dialogue that I'm not going to get into about, like, what seems to be, like, Tyler's, like, love-making fantasy. I'm not going to go into that, but there's a whole goofy thing about that. So, once these guys are to be served this food, we finally have someone who realizes, you know what, maybe it's time for us to try and escape. So we have Soren that goes on and is realized, like, well, like, if we can't get out through a door, Soren quickly grabs this chair and tries breaking through the window, and we of course realize that this glass is bulletproof, so, or just really thick glass. So Soren's attempts fail, and so he just goes right back to sitting back onto his chair as Elsa is a say to Soren. It's like, hey, let me get that chair for you so we can kind of sit you back in your place. So we then go on to have a comfort beverage. As, of course, you know, Sheldon, he would go on and give people hot beverages. So we have Chef Slowik that is to prepare this tea and gives it to everybody. So we now have the chef that is to talk to Richard and Anne, and it seems that these people have gone on a plethora of different times to come here. And so the Chef Slowik is to ask them, it's like, well, how many times have you been here? And Richard and Anne are stating, like, well, 5 or 6. And Slowik is like, you've been here 11 times. What was the meal that, like, any meal that we had given you the last time you had been here? Any meal. Just let me know. So they go on to make a clear decision of, like, well, it must have been this meal. And Slowik had stated, no, that wasn't the meal whatsoever. So for how many numerous times that they have gone on to been here, they had completely forgotten what they had ate, because they just figured that they would just come here as often as they want to, eat a good meal, but completely forget about it. Because probably they're so rich, and heaven forbid they really care. So Chef Slowik is to also mention the owner of this place, because Bryce, Soren, and Dave are all talking about, like, well, hey, like, like, how can you go on and do this when you have an owner that is kind of controlling what you're doing? And so Chef Slowik is like, oh, you mean Doug? Okay. Well, we have Chef Slowik that is the state is like, well, like, here's the thing. Like, I kind of took this restaurant from under Doug because, of course, we see Doug that is flying seemingly in midair as an angel, and Chef Slowik is the state like, yeah, like, I had kind of taken on this place over Doug, and so they go on and do the fallen angel command, and Doug starts dropping and drowns and dies. So we have after that where Elsa is to turn to Margot and tell her that her time is up to decide whether or not she wants to go on and be a chef or be a person making food or eating the food. My apologies. So we then go on and have the chef that's saying like, well, you know what? How about we all get some fresh air? How about we all go outside? So everyone goes outside, and so we then next go on to have this next chef, this next sous chef named Catherine that comes up. And so she ends up stating that she was forcibly being taken advantage of by Julian numerous times. Every time she tried to refuse, but like, she would not go on and have him talk to her for 8 months because he can go on and do that because he's a star and she's not. So we had Catherine that turns to Chef Slowik and she stabs him into the thigh, and then is to take the blood from his leg and smear it onto his chef's outfit and then walks off. So we then have Chef Slowik that is to offer all of the men, because this meal is going to be men's folly, and he is going to offer them 45 seconds to escape. And then people will start to come after them. So they're going to give them a 45-second heads up. So we have all the men, even Tyler, that are all running off. And so every single one of them fail. Like, we have at one point where John Leguizamo's character pulls a hammy, or hears something pop. We have all these people that go on and like try to end up in the water, and they end up getting pulled back. It seems that the only one really left that wasn't to be found was actually Ted. So Ted, being the last one to have been found, had gotten this Pessard egg. So they gave him this Pessard egg, they explain it, and then they leave him in this chicken coop for him to eat this meal and for him to have to come back. So we finally, when everyone comes back, we then have Chef Slowik that is to now take the time to kind of individually talk to Tyler. So Tyler, it seems, this whole entire time knew what was going on from the get-go, because Chef Slowik had gone on to know Tyler, and so Tyler was to know everyone was going to die, and so he purposely bought and brought someone to be with him. And Chef Slowik is like, well, like, why did you bring this person along? It's like, well, because my wife divorced me or left me, and like you wanted two people for a table, so I had to bring her, an innocent person, to this whole thing, to this whole ordeal. So Chef Slowik is to state how Tyler seems to know everything about food, even to the point of him easily knowing the machine of which that was the Paco jet, and that Tyler was to realize that the guy who he was talking to knew Tyler's name, but Tyler didn't know his. And Margot asked, like, Tyler, it's like, well, hey, like, why didn't you go on and ask what his name was? And Tyler's like, I don't care. So we have Chef Slowik that is to make an example of Tyler. And so Slowik is to mention to Tyler, it's like, well, since you know so much about food, how about you make a meal yourself? Make a meal. Make any meal. So we have Tyler that goes on to ask for certain things. He asks for butter, he asks for lamb, he asks for all of these things. And so we even have Chef Slowik that goes on and makes a chef outfit for Tyler to wear, and he puts his name Tyler on it. So after Tyler goes on and is to make this meal and is to think that it is done, that it is cooked, then Chef Slowik goes on to eat this meal and states that it is not good. So he ends up stating that it's undercooked, or the example of Tyler's meal is to say it's like, well, it's undercooked lamb, it's this, it's that, and so yeah, it's not a good meal whatsoever. So all of a sudden Tyler disappears, assuming to have him be killed off here. Rightfully so. So Chef Slowik is to take Margot and tell her to go and get this barrel that he needs. So, because Elsa didn't go on and get it for him, so Margot is going to get it. So, Margot goes on outside, and you would think that Margot would just be running for the hills. Like, would they be looking for her? Probably not. So, Margot goes on to get this barrel, and all of a sudden Elsa is to follow behind her, and Elsa's thinking that she's going to get replaced by Margot, and so Elsa and Margot start fighting. So we have Margot that is to fight with Elsa with this knife, and Margot puts this knife in Elsa's throat and kills her. So Margot tries to figure out a way to get the heck out of here, but instead she grabs the barrel instead and rolls it back into the place and's like, okay, like, what do you need me to do next? So Margot sits back down, and she's again a person that's going to eat 4 meals. So, because she went to the smokehouse. Anyways, with this key. So, we now have, of course, Chef Slowik, who is starting to tell certain people why he brought them here. So, the movie star. We have Chef Slowik that goes on and states that the one time that he had a day off, he went on to see Calling Dr. Sunshine. So, Chef Slowik was to see this movie and was to state that the one day off he had one time to watch this film, he thought it was dreadful. So, we go on to find that one of the rich guys, who I believe was Dave, or no, Bryce. Bryce is to go on and have a birthday. A birthday? A birthday. So, we of course have Bryce that states to the guys, it's like, well, hey, like, you told them that it was my birthday, and the guys were like, well, yeah, it seemed really funny a couple of hours ago, but now it's no longer funny. So, come to find out, by the time that Margot comes back with the barrel and everything like that, everything's going on, we come to find out that somehow somebody had gotten the word out to try to call for the Coast Guard. So, Chef Slowik is to tell everybody that's like, well, hey, like, if you go on and if you try to tell anything to this Coast Guard, he will probably die because of it. And, like, I'm honestly surprised that you guys haven't tried to escape a lot more than what you have really gone on to try and do here, which is very minimal at best. So, the U.S. Coast Guard comes in and it's to state that someone had made a call, and we, of course, have everybody joke, no, like, nobody made a call here. And so we have the Coast Guard that is to notice a movie star, John Leguizamo's character. He doesn't really have a name here. We also had the movie star and Felicity the whole entire time, like, almost divorcing, like, almost wanting to break up. The whole entire movie. We have, like, Felicity that goes on to, like, be giving him, like, the house keys and these credit cards and all these things. And we have, like, John Leguizamo's like, no, like, you're keeping all of them. Like, you're staying with me. So, throughout this movie, they're just bickering. And we even have at one point where they find out that that Felicity had been stealing from like, the movie star, and the movie star is like, yeah, I knew you were stealing, and I was okay with it. So the U.S. Coast Guard is to look at the movie star. It's like, well, hey, like, you know what? Like, I'm a big fan. I really loved that one movie you're in. What was it? Calling Dr. Sunshine. I was a big fan of that. And so Jean Leguizamo was like, yeah, of course, the one movie. So, Chef Slowik is like, well, hey, do you want an autograph for this, like, this one-of-kind chance? You can get an autograph. And so Slowik is to kind of look on at John Leguizamo, and Leguizamo is just like, well, like, I don't really have a pen. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I just, like, normally, I'm sure a lot of celebrities would just have, like, a bajillion pens and whatever to sign whatever, because they would probably assume a number of people would just go on and just want their autograph. It happens, like, at the worst possible time for a celebrity. They're like, hey, man, could I get your autograph? Like, yeah, while I'm peeing? Sure. Can we take a picture? Yeah, in the bathroom? That sounds great. Hey, would you mind taking a picture? Yeah, while I'm at a funeral? I would probably mind. So, we have the U.S. Coast Guard that gets his signature from John Leguizamo's character, and he starts to walk off, and the autograph just says, help us. So, the Coast Guard turns with this gun, and he's like, okay, like, what's going on here? What's really going on? Everybody starts shouting all at the same time. The Coast Guard doesn't really understand anybody. So, the Coast Guard is to finally just turn on his gun to everybody, and, like, Chef Slowik is like, hey. So, we have the U.S. Coast Guard that goes on to take his gun and fire away a torch because it's a fake gun, and he lights it into this candle, and I'm like, oh my god. Man, did you guys just get hosed. Man, did you guys think you were going to be saved. But I was like, who made the call? Who would have made the call? How would have anybody have gone on besides maybe Margot? How could they have gone on and called anybody? And, like, was this all a joke to make everybody feel like, oh my god, finally we're saved. Like, F you, Sheriff Slowick, and I'm gonna be saved. Hurrah, hurrah, because this guy has a gun. And come to find out, no. So, we're going back to putting up this another dish. And so finally, we just have Margot. That is she gonna make her clap. And so Margot goes on to tell Sheriff Slowick that she really goes on to state that she hates this food and that the food doesn't have love being put into it. It has obsession put into it. It's like, well, yeah, like all of these chefs have some axe to grind, so I can understand what she's stating, that every single one of these chefs are to really go on and do this without really love in their system. So, because they all realize they are all going to die. So, like, really, their food can just be whatever it is. So, we have Margot that states to Chef Slowick that it's like, well, yeah, like, even your hot dishes are all cold. So, like, I want to go on and I want whatever your last meal to be is to just send it back. Because I want a real meal. And so Chef Slowick is like, well, what could that be? I could make anything. And we have Margot that states, like, I want a cheeseburger. And I was like, yeah! Of course, the simplest of meals, a cheeseburger that you could go on and get anywhere. We're going to have Margot that states, like, yeah, I want a cheeseburger. I feel really horrible when I go on to a restaurant, an actual restaurant, and I'm looking at the whole menu, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I, like, really want anything on this but, like, a burger, and I'm just like, I could go on to, like, Mickey D's and get, like, a burger and not have to have been in this whole, like, restaurant atmosphere. So, like, it just kind of sucks when some restaurants just aren't really fitting me very well to just have me want anything more than just a burger. Like, there's quite a bit of times where I would go on and just get, like, some pork chops or maybe possibly, like, go into, like, ribs or something if that is to have a menu item somewhere. But so we have Chef Slowick that is to state, it's like, a cheeseburger, huh? Like, I bet you want a cheap one that your parents could have barely afforded. And Margot's like, of course, that's the one burger that I want. And so Chef Slowick is to say, like, okay, well, do you want any more than that? And she's like, well, can I have some fries with that? So Margot is to get this meal, this burger, and these fries, and we go on to have this man who gives her this meal, and she eats it, and he's like, well, how is it? And so Margot goes on to go and states, well, like, I thought it was great, but, like, it feels that my stomach was bigger than my eyes, so, you know what, can I just get like, after one bite, she's like, can I just get this meal to go? And so Chef Slowick is like, sure. So Chef Slowick is to have this gift bag for Margot, and is to let her walk out of there. And so Margot is to start looking around, and Anne's like, get out of here. Like, if you can get out of here, frickin' go. So Margot leaves, and is to not look back. And she goes on to try to figure out how she can make this boat work and tries to get off this island. So I'm like, wait a minute, what? And so she also is to sit on the boat and like eat the rest of the cheeseburger because, of course, she's starving, she's hungry. So Chef Slowik goes on to take the rest of the people and is to give them their last meal, which is a very simple one. And so we start to have all these designs being put around this whole entire room. And so one big massive design is to have a bunch of marshmallows being put on to people's chests. They're to have this bit of chocolate being put onto their heads, and Felicity is to like kind of like take this chocolate and lick it and be like, all right, it's real chocolate. So come to find out, this whole entire meal of this last meal is to be a s'more. And so Chef Slowik is to go on and is to grab this hot coal and is to walk in the middle of this s'mores extravaganza and is to drop this thing of coal that lights up this whole entire room. And so everyone dies. Even the chefs are all going to just stand there and die. And so we then go on to just see that Margot is on the boat and she's trying to get out of there and she's eating her burger. And that's how the movie just kind of finishes off. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So like, that's the menu for you. So, with that said, I guess I didn't go on and state where you can go on and even watch this movie. I forgot. Because there is a way that you can go on and see the menu for absolutely free, but I didn't state that anywhere. You can go on to Cullisgoal. 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 That seems to be the new bootlegish app that I've gone on to go into, as well as Play UHD, or you can possibly go on and kind of find any number of these, like kind of play or watch HD movies, 123 movies, yes movies. You can probably go on and find these kind of bootlegish apps anywhere. But I think I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.